Have you ever noticed how some senior women live alone, no boyfriend, no partner, yet they don't even seem like they're searching? And people rush to explain it with the same tired stories, loneliness, bitterness, she gave up, she must be too picky. But what if the truth is more unsettling than that? What if she isn't missing love? She's finally stopped missing herself. Because when a woman lives alone long enough, something deconstructs inside her. The old training falls apart, the idea that a man is the center, the proof, the plan. And in the quiet of her own home, a different kind of power begins to speak, not loud, not angry, just clear. The kind of clarity that makes certain men feel smaller, and makes other men, calm men, emotionally grounded men, suddenly look more attractive than ever. Carl Jung said that everything we deny becomes part of our shadow. And many women who choose solitude later in life become a mirror for that shadow because they represent what so many secretly crave, wholeness without permission. They don't beg for love, they don't perform for attention, they preserve their peace like it's sacred because they've loved before, and they know what it costs to shrink. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 shifts that happen after a woman has lived alone long enough, and how those shifts change the way she sees men forever. So, stay with me, because the silence around her isn't emptiness. It's a sanctuary. When the room finally gets quiet, it's almost unsettling at first, because for years, so many women didn't live in silence. They lived in emotional weather, someone's mood always floating through the house like fog, someone's irritation changing the air in the kitchen, someone's opinions taking up space in the living room even when they weren't speaking. So when a senior woman lives alone long enough, the first thing that happens isn't romance. It's not dating. It's not even healing, the way people like to package it online. It's something simpler and much more confrontational. The room gets quiet, and she starts hearing the truth. Not the truth about men yet. The truth about what she gave up just to be loved. I think about a woman I once heard about, late 60s. Most of her life, she was never single for more than a year. If one relationship ended, another one appeared fast, like a replacement job. Heartbreak, a few tears, then a new man with a new promise. A slightly better version of the same story. And then in her early 60s, a long relationship ended, and for the first time, nobody came next. 1 year passed, then 2, then 3. At first, she felt embarrassed, not because she missed a man, notice that, because she felt like she had failed the role, like the world was watching and silently grading her. No partner? At your age? What happened? And underneath the embarrassment was fear. The kind of fear no one admits out loud. Fear of getting sick alone, fear of being forgotten, fear that maybe love had expired for her. But then, something strange happened. Relief, not the dramatic kind, not the I'm free kind, more like her shoulders dropped for the first time in years, and she didn't even realize they had been lifted. She started noticing little things, quiet things. She could decorate her home without negotiating. She could sleep when she wanted, eat what she wanted, watch what she wanted, turn the lights off early, leave dishes in the sink without being judged, play music or keep the house silent, take up space without apologizing for it. And the biggest change, no one's emotional energy was hanging over her. Her living room didn't feel like a waiting room for someone else's mood. Her kitchen didn't feel like a stage where she had to perform pleasant. Her body started to soften because it wasn't bracing anymore. And this is the part most people misunderstand. Living alone didn't make her empty. It made her accurate. Because when you're finally away from noise, especially emotional noise, you stop confusing tension with love. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop calling walking on eggshells being considerate. You stop calling his unpredictability passion. The quiet exposes everything. And in that quiet, a thought entered her mind that changed her whole future. If this is what I have to give up just to say I have a man, is it worth it? That question doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from a woman who finally has something to lose, not him, her peace. And that's why this chapter matters. Because this is the moment where the old myth collapses. The myth that a woman alone must be lonely. The myth that a relationship, any relationship, is automatically better than solitude. The myth that her value is proven by being chosen. In Jungian terms, this is where the mask starts slipping. The good woman mask, the easygoing mask, the cool girlfriend mask, the I don't need much mask. Because in solitude, there's no one to perform for. And without an audience, you start meeting the parts of yourself you abandoned. The part that wanted quiet, the part that wanted safety, the part that was tired of shrinking, the part that kept saying softly, "This isn't love," and was ignored for years. And here's what's so powerful. She doesn't become colder. She becomes clearer about what drains her, clearer about what feels safe, clearer about what she will never negotiate again. So if you're watching this and you recognize that feeling, the strange mix of peace and grief, let me say something to you. That grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're finally mourning what you tolerated. And if your home feels like a sanctuary now, if the quiet feels like medicine, that's not because you can't love. It's because you can finally hear yourself again. And once a woman hears herself clearly, she can't unhear it. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about what happens when that quiet turns into a new kind of confidence, where men stop feeling like oxygen and start feeling optional. There's a moment that happens after you've lived alone long enough, after the quiet stops feeling strange and starts feeling like home, when you realize something that changes the way you sit across from a man. You're not hungry anymore. And that's when men become optional. Not irrelevant, not hated, not I don't need anybody. No, optional in the most psychologically dangerous way, because once a woman stops needing a relationship to feel whole, the entire system of control breaks. This is where people start calling her cold, or too picky, or the classic one, well, you're going to end up alone. But listen closely, those labels usually don't come from love. They come from panic, because there's something profoundly threatening about a woman who isn't trying to be chosen. She's not auditioning anymore. She's not twisting herself into a smaller version to be more manageable. She's not bargaining with her boundaries. And the reason she can do that is simple. She has a life that already fits her, a home that feels safe, a schedule that belongs to her, a peace she fought for, sometimes through divorce, grief, caregiving, disappointment, years of rebuilding. So now, when a man arrives, he is an oxygen, he's an addition. And the difference between those two is everything. When a man is oxygen, you tolerate what you should never tolerate. You explain away what you feel. You call disrespect a misunderstanding. You call inconsistency, he's just busy. You swallow your needs because you're afraid of silence. But when a man is an addition, your nervous system doesn't negotiate. It observes. It asks, does he bring peace or pressure? Does he bring ease or emotional work? Does he expand my life or shrink my spirit? And men feel this shift even before you say a word. They feel it in the way you don't rush to reply, in the way you don't over-explain yourself, in the way you can enjoy their company and still go home to your quiet house without needing to keep the night alive. And here's the hard truth. This is where the wrong men start to disappear, because some men aren't looking for partnership. They're looking for access to your body, your labor, your emotional availability, your forgiveness, access to the old version of you who could be guilted, rushed, pressured, confused. So when you show up as a woman who is already full, already stable, already at peace, they don't know where to grab. They can't hook you with flattery the way they used to. They can't punish you with distance because you're not afraid of quiet. They can't control you with the threat of leaving because you've already survived being alone. And you learned you can breathe there. In Jungian terms, this is when the shadow begins to lose its grip, because the shadow feeds on what you deny. And for many women, what they denied for years was this: I don't actually like how I feel in this. They denied it because they wanted the relationship to work, because they wanted to be chosen, because they were afraid of being seen as difficult. But once you've lived alone long enough, you stop denying your truth to protect someone else's comfort. And that makes you hard to some men, not because you're cruel, because you're no longer available for the old emotional contract. Now let me tell you something most people don't talk about. When a woman becomes optional-oriented, when she stops treating men like life support, it doesn't make her less loving. It makes her love cleaner, more honest, because she's not loving you out of fear. She's loving you out of choice. And that's why the emotionally mature men, real men, respond differently. The ones who have done their own inner work, who don't need to dominate to feel masculine, who can hold emotional tension without exploding or withdrawing. Those men don't feel threatened by your wholeness. They feel relieved because they weren't looking for a patient, they were looking for a partner. They don't want a woman who needs saving because saving always turns into resentment. They want a woman who wants them, not because she can't stand being alone, but because she genuinely enjoys who he is. And here's the part that might sting a little, but it's important. When you become a woman who doesn't need a man to complete her, your standards don't become high. They become real. They become measurable, not based on fantasy, not based on potential, not based on maybe one day he'll change, based on what your life feels like in his presence. That's why the wrong men call you picky, because to them, your bare minimum feels like rejection. Your calm no feels like disrespect. Your boundaries feel like a personal attack, but it's not. It's just clarity, and clarity is deadly to manipulation. So if you've reached this stage, if you've lived alone long enough that being alone no longer scares you, then I want you to remember this. You are not difficult. You are not asking for too much. You are simply no longer willing to trade your peace for someone else's presence. And the moment you stop trading is the moment your whole life starts choosing you back. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper, because once men become optional, something else happens that's almost shocking. You stop falling in love with potential, and you start seeing men exactly as they are. Have you ever had a conversation with a man where nothing bad happened technically, but after you hung up, your chest felt tight, your stomach felt off, your mind started spinning, and you couldn't explain why, because on paper, he didn't say anything terrible. He even sounded sweet. He even used the right words, but your body didn't believe him. This is the second shift that happens when a woman lives alone long enough. Your nervous system becomes your lie detector. And it's not mystical. It's not overthinking. It's not you being dramatic. It's biology meeting memory. Because when you've lived alone for a while, especially after years of emotional unpredictability, your nervous system finally gets a chance to reset. You wake up in a home where there's no shouting, no slammed doors, no silent treatment hanging in the air like poison, no tension you have to manage with a smile. Your shoulders loosen, your sleep deepens, your appetite stabilizes, you stop bracing, and then a man appears. Maybe it's someone online, maybe it's an old connection who suddenly checks in, maybe it's a friend of a friend. And at first, you're open, you're curious, you're not hardened. But then you notice something. After certain conversations, your body starts doing what your mind used to ignore. a little spike in anxiety, a headache that shows up out of nowhere, a heaviness in your chest when he makes a joke that isn't quite a joke, a strange sadness after he takes hours, days to reply, then calls it being busy, like your needs are an inconvenience. Nothing dramatic, nothing you can prove in court. But your body recognizes the pattern because the body does not respond to words, it responds to safety. And the woman you used to be, she would argue with her body, she would defend him. Maybe he's just stressed. Maybe he's not good with communication. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. And that's how so many women stay trapped. Not because they're weak, but because they were trained to distrust themselves, trained to give men the benefit of the doubt, even when their own nervous system is begging for mercy. But when you live alone long enough, something changes. You stop gaslighting yourself. You stop negotiating with tension. You start respecting the signal. And this is where your standards shift from fantasy to reality. You stop asking, could he be better? And you start asking the question that saves years of your life. If nothing changes, can I live with this? Let that question sit because it's a brutal one. It doesn't entertain potential. It doesn't comfort you with stories. It doesn't let you romanticize a man into a future he has not earned. It forces you to look at him as he is, right now, in real life. How does he handle conflict? Does he get curious or does he get cruel? How does he speak about women he's not trying to impress? How does he treat people who can't benefit him? Waiters, family, strangers, you on a day when you're not easy. When he hurts you, does he repair or does he deflect, blame, twist, and make you feel guilty for being affected? Because here's what many women finally realize after enough time alone. A charming man can feel like love until your body starts living in survival mode. And a calm, emotionally grounded man might not give you fireworks, but he gives you something your nervous system has been craving for decades: peace. In Jungian terms, this is shadow work in the body. Because the shadow isn't just your dark side, it's the truth you were taught to hide. The truth that you don't feel safe. The truth that you keep choosing familiar chaos because it matches an old wound. Truth that part of you learned to mistake intensity for intimacy. But in solitude, that spell breaks. You stop needing the emotional roller coaster to feel alive. And once your nervous system experiences real peace, it becomes almost allergic to emotional games. And that's why certain men suddenly feel exhausting. Not because you're too old for love, because you're too aware for confusion. So if you're watching this and you've felt that, if you've noticed your body reacting before your mind catches up, I want you to hear this clearly. Your body is not betraying you. It's protecting you. It's remembering what your heart tried to forget. And the more you honor that, the less power manipulation has over you, because manipulation needs one thing to survive: your self-doubt. It needs you to question your own signals. It needs you to over-explain your boundaries. It needs you to stay nice at the cost of your peace. But a woman who has lived alone long enough, she stops arguing with her own instincts. She listens, she watches, she chooses accordingly. And that is why, without raising her voice, without making a scene, without chasing closure, she becomes almost impossible to trap. Now in the next chapter, we're going to talk about the third shift, the one that changes everything, the moment you stop seeing men as the judge of your worth, and you become the authority over your own life. At some point, usually after enough nights of peace, enough mornings where you wake up without dread, something inside a woman changes so quietly that even she doesn't notice it at first. But men notice, because the questions in her eyes are different now. She's no longer asking, "Do you like me?" the way she once did. She's no longer scanning for signs of approval, waiting for the little crumbs that used to feel like proof. Now she's asking something far more dangerous. Do I like who I become around you? That's the third shift, and it's the one that flips the entire power dynamic. When you were younger, you might have treated dating like an audition without meaning to. You dressed for it, softened your opinions for it, laughed at jokes that didn't land, tolerated things that made your stomach tighten. You told yourself you were being easygoing, understanding, low maintenance. You made yourself smaller so love would stay. And maybe no one taught you that was a kind of self-abandonment. Maybe you thought that was what love required. But after living alone long enough, you start hearing your inner voice again. And it doesn't speak in drama, it speaks in simple, steady truth. I will never do that to myself again. So when a new man appears, you're not just hoping to be chosen, you're watching, not in paranoia, in clarity. You notice what you used to overlook. You to notice how he reacts when you disagree. Does he get curious or does he get cold? You notice how you feel after spending time with him. Do you feel lighter or do you feel like you need to recover? You notice if you're laughing more, key or apologizing more. And the test becomes almost embarrassingly simple. Do I feel safe enough to be honest around him? Because if you can't be honest, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. That's why this shift scares the wrong men. The wrong men don't mind you being attractive. They don't mind you being kind. They don't mind you being generous. They just need one thing. They need you to be impressible, easily dazzled, easily swayed, easily pulled back in with compliments, promises, intensity, grand gestures. But once you've lived alone long enough, your standards stop responding to sparkle. The expensive car doesn't distract you from emotional immaturity. The beautiful words don't blind you to inconsistency. The charm doesn't erase the way your nervous system tightens after you talk to him. You've lived through too much to be hypnotized by surface-level romance. And here's the part people misunderstand. This doesn't make you hard, it makes you accurate. Because you're not measuring love by how exciting it feels in the beginning. You're measuring it by what it does to your peace over time. That's why your new standard isn't, does he choose me? Your new standard is, does this relationship protect my peace? And when that becomes your standard, your whole taste in men changes. The man who makes you anxious stops feeling attractive, and the man who keeps you guessing stops feeling interesting. The man who flirts with your insecurity stops feeling powerful. Suddenly, the most attractive thing in the room becomes emotional steadiness. A man who doesn't punish you for having needs. A man who can apologize without turning it into a courtroom. A man who doesn't make you fight for basic respect. A man whose presence feels like calm, not confusion. In Jungian terms, this is where your inner authority takes the lead. For a long time, many women measured themselves through a man's eyes. His attention felt like proof. Proof you were desirable. Proof you still had it. Proof you were safe. But after enough time alone, after you rebuild yourself piece by piece, that external authority starts fading and an internal one rises, a part of you that says, I don't need your approval to know my value. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about becoming whole, not by eliminating your needs, but by integrating your opposites, the part of you that loves deeply and the part of you that protects fiercely. So now you don't date from emptiness, you date from wholeness. You don't enter a connection to escape your life. You consider a connection only if it adds to the life you've already built. And this is why some men will experience you as unreachable. Not because you're playing games, because you're no longer playing their game. You're not auditioning for the role of worthy woman. You're interviewing him for the role of safe presence. And if he can't meet that, not with perfection, but with emotional responsibility, you don't fight, beg, or explain. You simply step back with peace, with dignity, with the quiet strength of a woman who has learned that love should never require self-erasure. If you're watching this and nodding, If you can feel your past rising in your chest, that doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you've already been doing deep inner work. Even if you never had a name for it, you've been learning to listen to your body instead of talking yourself out of what you feel. You've been learning to honor your needs without apologizing for having them. You've been learning to walk away without explaining yourself into exhaustion. And I need you to hear this clearly. A weak woman doesn't choose peace night after night over familiar chaos. That is strength, because it's easy to go back to what's familiar even when it hurts. It's harder to stay loyal to your healing when no one is clapping for it. So if you feel safe, leave one sentence in the comments, just one thing your peace has taught you. Not for me, for another woman who's reading quietly, wondering if she's the only one. Let her see your words and realize she's not alone. Let your home remain a safe place for your heart, a place where your nervous system can rest, where you don't have to perform, explain, or shrink to be loved. Before we close, I want you to take a breath and really let this land. Because if you've lived alone long enough to feel your own presence again, then you already know the truth. Most people never understand. You don't see men as solutions anymore. You see them as invitations. An invitation to share a meal, to laugh, to build something honest, to be held without being handled, to love without disappearing, but never again an answer to your emptiness, never again the proof of your worth. And that's the part I hope you carry with you after this video. Living alone isn't the end of love. It's where self-respect gets its voice back. It's where your nervous system learns what peace feels like. It's where your standards stop being fantasies and start becoming truth. It's where you stop auditioning and you start choosing. And if you're in a season of rebuilding, redefining, learning to trust your inner voice again, this space is for you. Subscribe, not out of impulse, but out of recognition. Because you are not the only one walking this path, and you don't have to feel invisible while you do it. And one more thing, stay close. Because in the next video, I'm going to break down 5 behaviors that look romantic, but are actually emotional manipulation, especially later in life when you're craving comfort, stability, and honesty. Until then, keep your peace sacred. And remember, you're not difficult. You're not asking for too much. You're finally asking for what love should have been all along.